scribbling some kind of more fun questions down. I could probably get to the writerly questions in a little bit. So we'll talk for a little bit and then open it up to any questions that folks here might have. Yes, okay. So you've been writing Manila for a long time with this. It feels like you've been writing Leche for since
12 years.
90s? 12 years. That's nuts. But congratulations. And I want to know, now that you've written this book and also your 2 books of poetry, how's your relationship with Manila now? Did you feel any kind of purging or exorcism, or is this kind of an ongoing process?
I think because Manila is always evolving,
Yeah.
it's always morphing. It's a city that, whether I like it or not, I have to go back to.
Okay.
I think it stems from the culture shock, or reverse culture shock that I experienced when I first went back there in '91, which is the kernel for the novel.
Okay.
I wanted to write about what it feels like to return to a memory called home. So that's the autobiographical portion of the novel. The main reason why it took so long, why it took 12 years to write, it wasn't because I wanted it to last this long. It was because the book had 2 opportunities to be published in its earlier versions. Unfortunately, those publishers folded. But on the other hand, the positive side was that it gave me a chance to revisit the novel. And I think, you know what, in a way I'm kind of glad that I didn't put this out right away, or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, which is when Carolyn Graff was supposed to publish it. Because this is the book that I wanted to write.
Okay.
And even till the very end, we were editing this with my in-house editor at Coffee House in October. I was editing. I was adding on sections in there. You know? So it goes to show that a book is never finished.
Right. So the next thing you write might be a continuation or an
No more sequels.
That's it. Okay.
No more.
No sequels.
Watch me choke on my words, but no more sequels.
Right. You're going to go home and write more.
No more.
So process-wise, then, I'm wondering at what point did you, because you incorporate a lot of different forms in the form that is the novel. So we've got these dictionary definitions, we have these tourist tips, the postcards, the text and the images on the postcards. Were those part of your original design, or did they just kind of find their way in, and how?
Well, it's a travelogue. I mean, Leche is a part travelogue. It's actually my Gulliver's Travels, because I love Jonathan Swift, and so he was the inspiration for this novel, and he has his satiric, he's very satirical, sardonic, and I gravitate to that kind of lit. But so the tools that a tourist or a traveler have are postcards, guidebooks. So this is a guidebook, really, for those who are about to enter Manila, right? Another reason why it took me so long to write it was because the first draft or 2, my mentor, who lives in Hawaii, told me that the one missing component here was Manila. So of course I asked her a very stupid question, like, oh, so do I have to live in Manila? I just came from there for a year and a half. She said, well, yeah, because it's missing. So I had to go back and, put on my anthropologist or sociologist hat and really look for signs, the literal and also the metaphorical sense of signs, and what makes Manila distinct, other than, apart from it being a developing city, right? And so I lived in different pockets of Manila, from the rich section to the not so rich, and I did go to the heavily depressed areas.
So you really believe that you have to be immersed like that in order to get kind of the spirit of the place?
For me as a writer, yes. Other writers can write about a place and not have been there, but for me, my method is I have to be there. I have to, because the city or the place then will give you that starting point and then the jumping off into the realm of imagination. I can't just go there and write about a place that because maybe it's an old-fashioned methodology, but the place will feed you if you respect it.
Okay, yeah. That's good. And you know, I'm actually thinking it's funny that you say that this is a travel guide for somebody returning or going to Manila. I was actually reading your book at the airport, and there was a woman who was sitting next to me. It was not Filipino, but she said that she was taking her first trip to Manila soon, and was this a good book for her to read? You know, upon going to Manila for the first time. I'll tell you later what I told her, but I mean, for
you know who can answer that
yeah.
question best? Right there, Joel Tan, because he used my book, the version before this, which is closest to this version, as his re-entry to Manila.
Yeah. After 29 years, I've gone back, and it was, Zach had just finished, as he was saying, the first major draft of it, and I hadn't been back in 29 years. And so he hands me the manuscript, I hand him my manuscript, and so I literally, it's his voice guiding me through Manila. So that re-entry back to Manila was so much narrated by my dear friend, and it couldn't have been a better reunion, because it was so, as you can imagine, really intense for me, but it so paralleled what was happening in the book. And, there, was, again, my dear friend, who was an extension of this. So it was really fantastically hilarious and accurate and as surreal as anybody who's ever been to Manila knows. So I've always said that I think this is the definitive book, tourist book for Manila. Because if you really want it straight up, the whole terrible beauty of it, this is it.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, and I think I'll ask you one more question, and then we can open it up to folks here. What I wanted to know also is that you're really prolific, so I envy you, because in the meantime, while you were taking many years to write Leche, you put out 2 books of poetry, and now you have a 3rd book coming out. And what was that process like to be working on? Were you working on these books all at the same time? And what was that relationship like between going from Leche to primetime apparitions, or to the evolution of the side?
Well, I never see them as separate genres anyway, like poetry and fiction. I see them more as having a symbiotic relationship, so one feeds the other, and vice versa. It was poetry, really, that helped me locate the language for the narrator. Because one of the things that I was dissatisfied with was the voice of the narrator. He wasn't mature enough, he wasn't, and it was poetry that helped me locate that language. So, it was a given, it was a very giving, And I start off as a poet. So it's poetry that teaches me, focus, even reading poetry, it teaches me how to breathe, and it calms me down. And Leche is a very hyper novel. And it's the one element that I took from Rowling. That hyper, because if you've been to Manila, it's a very chaotic city. The thing that one has to understand is that within that chaos, for those people living there, there is a sense of order, right? But it's the order that only they know, right? I am still trying to grapple with, trying to make sense of that orderliness, right? Because sometimes my Americanness would just come out like, can we just stand in a straight line? Or why do I need 5 people to ring me up? I'm only buying a notebook, right? But if you understand, it seems absurd to us, but if the longer I stay in Manila, the more I start to understand it. And at times, I understand it with a degree of resistance. So poetry, it's something that I cannot shake off, right? And I think poetry only strengthens the prose.
This is good to see. I'm a poet, so I'm totally pro poetry on that one.
Pro prose too.
Okay, okay, so why don't we go ahead and open it up to you folks? Do you folks have any questions for Zach?
What did you tell the woman?
I actually told her, I think it would be great. It's satire, so you have to keep that in mind. But it's pretty accurate in terms of the kind of energy you'll get once you step off that plane. Yeah. So, yeah, I told her it would probably help. It's crazy. Edwin.
Yeah, actually, when I saw the title, I laughed. It's like one of your characters, or like, yeah, I haven't heard that word before. Leche. It's like, hey, it's funny. And what's interesting about our leche in the Philippines, it comes really from the Spanish mala leche, which is bad milk, which is like a curse. So somebody don't like mala leche. And it really goes down to like, it's the bad milk that you suck from your mother who was your mother was.
But, leche in to Madrileños means a slap. So if you go to a bar and you just ask for a leche as opposed to a vaso de leche, they'll slap you. That's what my Spanish teachers say.
Really?
Yeah, So if it's not true, then slap him.
We'll definitely try and find out. Yes.
This is on Coffee House Press in the U.S. Are there any plans to have it released in the Philippines under a different press, or what are your thoughts about international publication?
I have no qualms about international publication. I think they're working on a Philippine publication. I don't know. It's that's my agent's issue. But I have no problems about it being released in the Philippines. I think it should be because it's about that place. And I think they should have access to this book other than photocopying it.
And to follow up on that, do you think that Filipinos see themselves this way? It was another one of my questions that I did not ask, was some of the challenges of fictionalizing real life and real people, and the kinds of challenges, not necessarily writerly, but more social. Right? What is that like to, if somebody picks up the book and sees him or herself there, portrayed in this crazy, satirical way, Have you come up against that at all?
I think that, there was the guy who interviewed me a couple days ago, asked me about if I had any anticipations about the reception in the Philippines. I said, I think I said something like, I don't care.
Really?
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care what the reception is, if it's going to be positive or negative, because it's just, my Manila is just one of the million versions of Manila. So it's not the definitive, like Joel said. Maybe it's a definitive for the Balikbayan, but it's not the definitive. It's not meant to be a representation of Manila. I think I was working on that, but beyond that, right? That this is only one Balikbayan's version of the city, right? And of course it's going to be snidey. You're talking about somebody who's lived in America for half of his life, and he's going back to this city, right? That has changed so significantly and so profound to the point that, of course, half of him is going to hate the city. Half of him is going to be in shock. But I was working more with this idea of why is he being shocked with what was once familiar, right? So that was that. I was more interested in that rather than this positive. This is not the book you're gonna give to a tourist, right? But if a tourist wants okay, you know what? In your face, this is it. This is Manila. Joel is right? Because the other thing is I read up on all these other novels that are set in Manila. Like Hagedorn's Dog Eaters, Ria Luyo's Umbrella Country, Sihuco's Ilustrado, right? I was like, no, I don't see it. I see my Manila in them, but maybe not for the most part. So that's why I wrote this book. No, this is my Manila.
Right. And they all have 3 different crazy versions of Manila as well.
Yeah.
So I think might be one thing that a lot of Philams have in common with one another when writing about the city. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Folks.
Oh.
Yes.
So now this is out in the world, and the next thing, review. And I'm curious, what is the best, worst review you got? Meaning, what was the thing that somebody said about your book that kind of made you laugh out loud in terms of, I don't think this person completely gets it?
And know what? I don't really think it was a negative review because he ended up liking it at the end. He was kind of schizophrenic, actually. Because he liked it, then he hated it, then in the end he's like, oh yeah, it's a lively satire, you know, after dissing it. It was, I think it was and I don't know if it's a he or a she, but the reviewer's attempt to categorize the novel. Because he said, well, this is not postmodern, right? And this is not magical realism, even though I said that there's no such thing as magical realism in the novel, right? This is not quite satire, right? And so, well, I said, well, and I think he failed to, in that sense, because he was trying so hard to place the book in a specific genre, right? I'm totally against categorize, you know, and so, in a way, I succeeded because he couldn't place the book in a specific box, right? So I think his negative review was the most positive review that I got. Well, the most positive that I got came from my brother, and he said, oh, I just read the novel, it's the best, whatever. And I even posted on my Facebook, it was so hilarious. It was like, it was raw, like it was like Garcia Marquez, but raw like sashimi. And then he said something like, oh, then the next line was followed by, oh, by the way, you know, can you give me $250 for my iPad? And so I'm like, oh, he's charging me to praise my novel. But, you know, so the reviews, I have never paid more attention to reviews until now, really. I think if you work on something for this long, you want to see the kind of reception. You want to see if it's going to be received or not. And this is the strange part. Nobody reviewed Rolling the R's. Maybe only one reviewer. And then for the major papers, just one, Village Voice. And when I see reviews of Leche, like right next to my name is author of Rolling the R's. Like they didn't review that book, but now they recognize it. So that made me feel good. The fact that they, even though I'm so over Rolling the R's, I said, you know, so, but that made me feel good. That the fact that it's gotten recognition by these papers, you know. So we'll see what the papers will have to say about Leche. But it's done. I'm done with Leche.
Yeah.
No trilogy. Yeah, there's a poetry coming out in October.
Okay.
It's called Drive-By Vigils, and it completes the trilogy of the poetry collection that I started with, the Prime Time and Evolution.
Okay.
And we're doing a reading next October.
We are. We're going to try to figure that out. We're going to read together in October. And any last thoughts from folks?
This question. Did you do extra research into the supposedly real life incidents that are included in the novel? Especially, I'm referring to those incidents about the Marxists. There's a lot of truth telling there. Some of them that I know of, either I don't know if they're hearsays or they're, how do you put them? Like, do you acknowledge its truthfulness or?
Right. Well, first and foremost, it's fiction, right? But I did do major research. I did research as far back as 1899 because it chronicles Vince's family, which begins in 1899. Because his great-grandfather was an American soldier that went to the Philippines to fight the Filipinos, right? But with Marcus's, I also did research on the military bases, the pros and cons, right? And major research on the Marcus's. Like, what could I possibly say about the Marcus's that Hagedorn and all these other writers have not already said, right? The sex. The sex aspect, which is the controversy that dealt with Marcus's love affair with Dovie Beams, an American B-movie actress. And I didn't see that in all those other novels. I'm like, boom, that's it. That's my jackpot. Imelda will be after my ass. You know. I also did research on, but it was not so much like trying to, again, it's not so much trying to be a representation of history, because I think a novelist's goal, for me anyway as a novelist, is not to tell you what happened, but to make you think it happened. So, that said, I had my editor Googling everything. Like, she didn't even know Chris Aquino existed, right? She was Googling everything, like, but it's fiction, right? But, really, there's a lot of truth in fiction, you know? And I think that's what gets a lot of novelists into trouble, because it convinces people that that shit really happened. So I had my own take on the film center fiasco, where it buried a bunch of workers because one floor collapsed. So I put the nun in there. I put my nun in there. Like, I need that nun to go in there and like pray the rosary, you know. And right now it's strange, because 20 years ago, Corazon Aquino was the president. Chris Aquino was the first daughter. Now, her brother is the president. And they are dealing with the same issues, like morality issues, especially with the reproductive health bill, right? So, a book really is, I mean, the one thing that Leche taught me was, a book is never dated, no matter how specific the book is, how specifically dated the book is. All right.
I think there was another question. Yeah, I was going to ask you, if you could paint a picture of your Manila, what would it look like?
Leche. Because if you read Leche, it's a movie. And again, that's the interviewer asked me. He asked me, who would you have in mind to play the lead role of Vince? I'm like, nobody. Brad Pitt. But then he said, like, oh, you know, it's very cinematic. You know, would you be open to adapting it into film? I said no, because it's already a movie. I wrote it like a movie, with all the memory going in and out of the present. So I devised it like a movie. Right.
I think we're good.
Were you going to take your book to Canada and to the UK and other parts of the world?
You know, I would like to, because the novel is also deals with overseas contract workers. So I hope so. You know, depends on the press, the play of the press, and if they will, you know, review the book. You know, but I'm open to, like, actually somebody invited me in Toronto. But of course my next question was, are you gonna fly me there? So I'm open to reading in those places, because I live with overseas contract workers in Japan and in Madrid. Yeah. So, and they were very hospitable. You know. The moment they said, "Are you Filipino?" I said, "Yeah." Like, Mikasa y tu casa.